the moment our fellow geeks, dweebs, nerds, and other unfortunates have been fervently waiting for has finally arrived. It's time for TMI, Confessionals of the Nerd Kind. And now, your hosts, Jeff Nerfherder Chandler, Jim Kaiju Baker, and Mike Mjolnir Evans. And now, let's get on with the show. Here is TMI.
Hey, we're back again.
So this is a new 5-bucket episode. And
5 buckets? Who
so
chose this one?
we were of the inclination that our 5-bucket episodes would require us, at least 2 of the 3 main players here at TMI. And there are only 3. Today, there's only 2. We would be in agreement that this is a 5-bucket. Now, we've run out of those titles. I think we only had maybe 5 that at least 2 of us were in agreement that it was a 5-bucket.
Well, I mean, that's pretty rarefied. If you feel strongly about one and you can convince me, I can easily be swayed.
So I think at this point, if at least one of us thinks that it's a 5-bucket, then that deems it worthy to have a 5-bucket episode.
So in other words, screw the other 2 guys.
Screw the other 2 guys. Yeah, they just have to deal with it. If we go by that, eventually I'm going to have to watch The Pope of Greenwich Village and and Goonies and agree that they're 5-bucket movies.
Wait, hold. Are you going to tell me right now that you don't think Goonies is a 5-bucket movie?
I'm going to tell you that right now. Yes.
What? I should have put Citizen Kane on there.
Yeah, well, yeah, I wouldn't say that that's a 5-bucket either. These are personal choices. So I am not one. I wouldn't say that Goonies is a 5-bucket, but I am in complete agreement to you that you think it's 5-bucket. I'm not going to argue the fact. I am not.
Fair enough.
And I will watch it happily.
There you go. And that's what it's all about. Forcing each other to watch stupid movies.
Now, if
it's
you
like
have,
Mystery Science Theater.
It is. Now, if you have ever visited us at a booth at a local Comic-Con, if you are local to New York and you've ever met us in the flesh, you will know that we do a little feature called Spin the Wheel, where we spin the wheel and you have to answer a trivia question, and we normally have a prize. We're fast running out of these prizes.
We're trying to get some branded T-shirts and some other things going because, we got to propel the property forward.
The brand.
It's all about the branding.
So we actually found an app that does a virtual spin the wheel because we were thinking, how can we really in a fair way choose what 5-bucket movie we're going to cover next? So we found an app that you can spin a wheel and it makes the decision for you. So we put 20 of our picks, our individual picks, in this wheel, and we spun it for the first time, and we came up with Rogue One, and we're going to present that to you today. Now, this is my choice. This was not on Mike's list. This was not on Jeff's list.
I am surprised. Can we just call that wheel NerdBot 5000 going forward?
We can, absolutely.
All right, it is the NerdBot 5000.
The NerdBot 5000.
It randomly spit out this choice.
So now this was my pick. Saw this in the theater. It's only 3 years old. Back in 2016, I saw this in the theater. Christmas release, as these Star Wars movies have been apt to be. And this was the first standalone Star Wars movie that we got. And the only, I take that back. Solo, got.
Yeah. Before they shut down.
Before they shut down the standalones.
Yeah, they were calling them a Star Wars story. And then that kind of went away.
Which unfairly so, because I think that these are the 2 highlights, Solo and Rogue One, that we've been given so far from the Disney company since they acquired the rights from George Lucas.
I will definitely back you up on that.
A public perception of these things is colored by how well it does at the box office, not whether it's a good movie or not. Same thing happened to Godzilla, King of the Monsters.
Which is, don't even get me started on that.
Let's not get started on that.
Yeah.
But as directed by Gareth Edwards, I think Rogue One is a so solid entry into the entire Star Wars canon. I'm putting it up there above the prequels. I even put it up there in my personal Star Wars list, a tick above Return of the Jedi. So this is the number 3 Star Wars movie to me in total of all time.
George Lucas agrees with you. He loved this movie.
He did. And Gareth Edwards, the director of this, who actually directed the first Godzilla movie, 2014, said that he could die happy because George Lucas validated
Hell
him
yeah.
and said it was
Are you
good.
kidding me? George Lucas comes out in his little flannel and he says, "Good job, kid."
Now, this is after him disparaging J.J. Abrams, The Force Awakens.
Well, that's also coming out, and we didn't talk about that news, but Bob Iger has released an autobiography, and he talks about that when Disney took over Lucasfilm. They bought it from George. It came with his spec scripts for the next 3 movies. And I think George just thought that they were going to be so happy and elated that he was offering them up his storylines and just move forward. And when he saw The Force Awakens, he was heartbroken that they didn't adhere to anything that he had written.
And
I guess,
as we pointed out, The Force Awakens is pretty much a note-for-note recreation
and that's
of
what he
Star
said.
Wars.
There's nothing new. And what Iger's argument, which is you don't realize that we just spent $4 billion on a franchise, and we had to kind of stay true to what you had done. We couldn't give people something that was so completely different. But that's what George said. He goes, every movie I gave them something different, better or for worse. You brought up the prequels, but for better or for worse, he tried something different every time out. Yes, The Force Awakens, by and large, is just a plot for plot point recreation of episode 4.
Now, Jeff, correct me if I'm wrong, but as early as 83, maybe even earlier, it's always been known that this has been a 9-picture kind of deal.
Yeah, George does like to kind of rewrite history a little bit. If you go back to some of those early Starlog magazines, he always talked about being a 9-story.
Yeah. 3 movies.
Mark Hamill, right?
Yeah, because
trilogy.
Look at the numbers, 4, 5, and 6. So you always knew there was a 1, 2, and 3, and he always gave it the impression that there was a 7, 8, and 9 as well.
Mark Hamill is on record as probably around Jedi saying point blank, George told me in 20 years from now, we're going to do a new set of movies with you as the Master Jedi, as Obi-Wan type character, teaching a new generation. So he knew he was in for the long term.
It came to be, but not in the way that Lucas wanted it to be.
No, and listen, he
And,
can go crying. He can go crying as $4 billion. I mean, I do feel bad for him from a creative standpoint. This is your baby. You nurtured this. You are giving up the reins. And here's all my personal journals. These are all my thoughts I had on these characters that I'm their father of. I have nursed and created these. Yes, the actors have put just as much heart and soul into them, but this is where I want it to go, or where I think it should go, and they just dismissed it completely.
The direction that they took the character of Luke Skywalker in episode 8, it is very heartbreaking because you never did see the Jedi that Luke eventually became. You just see it barely in flashbacks, and he's just a burned out shell by the time you get to him.
And that's the backlash that many diehard fans have, which is, it's sad. You never saw that character in his heyday. You saw him come up to become what he was going to become, and then 30 years later, we now see his downfall. So
disappointment, I think. Force Awakens, then going into The Last Jedi. But Rogue One came out tucked in between those 2 movies. It's just an adrenaline rush. It is not raking over the same Star Wars formula that The Force Awakens does. It is very much a standalone story that happens directly before A New Hope.
Yeah.
Seconds before A New Hope opens.
Which, that's one of the complaints of this movie, which is it considered gratuitous fan service? That you went out of your way to really connect those dots. Because the entire plot of this movie is spelled out for you in the opening crawl of episode 4. Did we need to see it? Did we need to go down this road? But it is a great movie, and one of the other complaints is the people who made this movie obviously never saw a Star Wars movie. And that, to me, is the dumbest argument, because just because it exists in the same universe, why does it have to have the exact same aesthetics, look, or feel? So he didn't use a transition swipe as all the Star Wars movies have. You didn't have an opening crawl. You didn't have the John Williams score. It's still set in the universe. It's for lack of a better term, it's like a down and
this
dirty.
is more of a Star Wars movie to me than The Force Awakens or The Last Jedi. This is the same argument can be made. Well, these people obviously did see a Star Wars movie too many times. You know, they have to get away from it.
Of course, it's a fan film. Anything not made by Lucas is a fan film. J.J. Abrams' movie is a fan film. He was a fan of Star Wars as a kid growing up.
Yeah, to me, this is what a Star Wars movie should deliver. It doesn't matter that it doesn't have the crawl. It doesn't have the swipes. It has the energy, that same energy that the original Star Wars
there's a heart in this that's right. I think is missing in the other ones.
Definitely, yeah. The
Solo, I think, is more of a fan. It's more fan service driven.
Yeah, well, that really hits on the beats that you want to see. How does Chewbacca and Han Solo meet?
But it's a fun movie, and for it to be just dismissed, I think is just stupid. I don't get it, because I think that is the Star Wars movie everyone's crying for. I want to see a Star Wars movie that
and Rogue One kind of, it's like a mix of Star Wars and Force 10 from Navarone or something like that.
Right.
You know?
It is definitely Dirty Dozen. It's a gritty war movie just told in the Star Wars universe.
It's just a nitty gritty actioner, and that's where it delivers, and that's why I love it. So for anybody that's living under a rock, the plot revolves around the building of the first Death Star from Episode 4, from A New Hope, and how the Empire comes into the knowledge how to build such a weapon of mass destruction, and how the rebels get their hands on the plans that they have, which you see in that opening shot of Episode 4, A New Hope. So it's that whole backstory that leads right into the first scene of A New Hope, and introduces the character of Galen Erso, played by Mads Mikkelsen, who is the ex-Imperial officer who the Empire knows has the means to build such a weapon. And he's pretty much a defector who's now living as a farmer with his family.
Right, with his family. He's kind of like...
He's in hiding from the Empire, and they come after him, and it's the great Ben Mendelsohn, who we've seen as Talos recently in Captain Marvel. And this was really his shining moment, I think, in recent history. They really put him on the genre map as Krennic. But he is such a great addition to the Empire's cadre.
Yes, because he is just a straight-up soldier.
It's a pity that he wasn't present. It's impossible. It's like, what if? But it's just a pity that he wasn't there in Episode 4.
That's the thing. That's the one thing about this movie is you kind of know how it ends. You know exactly what's going to happen.
Yeah.
And the fact that you will never hear or see any of these other characters again, you know that 3/4 of them die.
Yeah.
You know,
and I'm glad that they do. It
does not detract or take away from the story leading up to it.
Yeah, and it really ends with them dying, but they die as rebel heroes. They are the ones that got them the
catalyst that basically, they are the New Hope.
So the main character is Jyn Erso, Galen Erso's daughter. Throughout the movie, you realize that he has agreed to build this, but he's building it with a caveat. He's putting a booby trap right in the middle of this thing. So it's his hope that he gets this out to his daughter, to whomever, via a defecting Imperial pilot, Bodhi, played by Riz Ahmed. Now, you may think, why is he building it in the first place if he's only meaning to destroy it? I don't really know the answer to that.
Yeah, see,
I can't tell you the answer to that.
That is one thing I don't really like about it, that he purposely built in that exhaust port that Luke uses in order to... I would like to see that somehow the rebels found this and found a weakness. It wasn't built with a weakness. This guy, for all intents and purposes, is Oppenheimer building a friggin' atomic bomb. That's like Oppenheimer's like, what if I just put a kill switch on this thing? So because
the Death Star is the nuclear weapon of the Star Wars universe. They don't have something this big before the Death Star.
No. So I don't like that aspect of it, that he built it, but I guess it's a redeeming quality for his character, that he reluctantly went back to work for the services in order to try and save his family, even though his wife was killed and his daughter's like,
and they don't know, they never caught his daughter. So she's pretty much safe by the time it's years later.
If you just leave him with Forrest Whitaker, she's good. So in that regard, I don't like that, because it wasn't by chance that the rebels were able to, it wasn't luck that they figured out how to take this thing out. It was inherently built in it as a doomsday device.
Because that's really what they establish in A New Hope, that they find this.
Right.
key into destroying the Death Star. It's wasn't there as a blueprint for them to find.
And I'm glad they didn't go back and tinker with that speech, at the end when they're in, the temples of Yavin, and he's like, Urso built this thing with a kill switch, and all we got to do is get some fighter pilots in there. So I'm glad they didn't go to that extent.
But we have this dirty dozen of, not a dozen really, but it's this crew of Rogue One, which is what they name themselves.
Designated, yeah.
Just reading some research into this, Rogue One not only refers to the literal squadron in the movie, but it could also reference Jyn, who is a Rogue One.
She's the catalyst.
She's not really a rebel. She's definitely not. She's not a Democrat or a Republican here.
There you go. Is she independent? She's
an independent, really. She's
an independent.
She's got no stake in the game, really, until she.
No, and she doesn't either. She doesn't want any part of it.
No, she doesn't.
Which I think is great. She's like Rey in a lot of. Rey just wanted to be left alone.
Yeah, she did.
Don't drag me into your. I'm just waiting for my people to come and pick me up.
And it could also refer to the movie itself, because as of the first standalone Star Wars movie, it is kind of the Rogue One that's out there.
You are blowing my mind right now.
Yes. So Jyn is recruited by Cassian Andor, played by Diego Luna, and his delightful robot sidekick, K2SO.
Played by Alan Tudyk, right?
Yeah,
Alan
it almost
Tudyk.
Sounds like a German techno-pop outfit, like KMFDM or something, K2SO, played by, Alan Tudyk. Famously of Firefly, Dollhouse, Joss Whedon fame.
We mentioned it in a previous episode. Tucker and Dale.
Tucker and Dale, yes.
Versus Evil.
Great
go watch that right now. Stop listening to this episode and go watch that movie.
So he gives quite a bit of life to K2SO.
Yes.
And always back talking. I guess it's K2SO is a recommissioned Imperial pilot droid.
Yeah, because we see others like him. We can't have a Star Wars movie without a smart-ass robot.
He's always questioning Cassian's motives and his orders and talking back to him. And he's not above giving up a smack every once in a while as well.
He is a fun character. I will give you that. Yeah.
So we have Diego Luna. We have K2SO. We've got Jyn Erso on board. We've got the great, almost like an Ernie and Bert kind of pairing of Baze and Chirrut, which is the characters. They're not... Chirrut Imwe is the character that Donnie Yen plays. He's not a Jedi, but he is a believer in the Force. So without having a lightsaber, he can still kick your ass in a variety of ways. And he is blind.
Yeah, it's kind of like I'm a kung fu fighter. I've never actually trained, but I've seen a lot of the kung fu movies. So I can do what I can do.
So they're my favorite two characters, I think, is Baze and Chirrut. Baze and Chirrut here.
Yeah, that really rolls off the tongue as well. Some of these names are just...
So we have this kind of Suicide Squad, almost.
Yeah.
Once they have Jyn Erso on board, they have to go to Sal Guerrera, played by Forrest Whitaker, who raised Jyn from a child because he found her after the Empire killed her mother and took her father and raised her. And they have to bring her back to him to get this defected Imperial pilot who is being held by Sal Guerrera. And there's a great scene in there where Sal Guerrera has the Imperial pilot, doesn't really believe that he's on the up and up, that he actually wants to defect. So he uses this creature, this kind of a lie detector of a blob type creature called Borg Gullet, who extracts the truth out of the Imperial defected pilot. Whatever you do, do not use the bathroom after the Borg Gullet does. Give it about an hour and a half tops. Yeah.
What the hell did you do in here?
You destroyed this place, man.
Did you eat? Oh, yeah, that's right.
They have to get to Scarif. I don't even want to explain it. I just want to get right to the ending. They destroy Sal Guerrera because he lives on like a Tatooine-type world, Jeddah.
Jeddah. It's like a Jedi stronghold temple at some point, because you do see like fallen Jedi statues.
Right, and this is where Chirrut and Baze, this is where they live. They're the guardians of the wills. No.
Well, so we'll get into this a little bit, which is the great thing about this movie is that they really went overboard to pull in a lot of these elements that were established in old Star Wars novels, comics, that used to be considered canon until Disney took over everything and said, no, only the movies and the cartoons. because Saw Gerrera showed up. His character originated in the Clone Wars cartoon, or was
Really?
it Rebels?
I didn't know that. I didn't
Yep.
know that.
Yep, the Kyber crystals. That was established in Alan Dean Foster's novel from 1978,
Yeah.
Splinters of the Mind's Eye.
So the Kyber crystals, yeah, that's what powers the lightsaber of the Jedi.
Right, correct. Yeah. So, so the cool thing is that they're kind of bringing in some of this stuff that we as nerdy fans know about, but they're now making it official.
So they have to get the Imperial defected pilot from Saw Gerrera, and in doing so, they spark retaliation from the Death Star. They destroy the city of Jeddah because that's where they've been mining these Kyber crystals for the Death Star. So we never really knew that before, that the Death Star was powered by Kyber crystals.
Right.
The Jedi used for their lightsaber. So they've been using the site of Jeddah to mine these crystals, and they've kind of mined it for all it's worth. So not only are they leaving now the site of Jeddah, now they can destroy it because that's where Saw Gerrera is, and they think that they're erasing this plot to steal the plans and to use this defected pilot to get those. So they don't quite make it. They manage to hyperspace out of it. Saw Gerrera, unfortunately, is killed.
He goes bye-bye.
He goes bye-bye, but the rest of our team manages to hyperspace out of Jeddah before they're destroyed as well. So they have a father-daughter reunion, Galen Erso and Jyn Erso, where he's being held as well. And now they go there not to rescue him, but Cassian's orders were to actually execute him before he could build anything else. So that gives some push and pull in between the characters of Cassian and Jyn once she realizes why they went there. It wasn't a rescue mission. It was to
get to her father.
In the end, they realize that what really needs to be done after Galen is killed, they have to get to Scarif to get those Death Star plans and transmit them off the base. So that's the end game of this movie, is getting this team onto Scarif, which the rebels don't want to do it. They don't want to risk the pilots to get into Scarif to get those plans. So this team of rogue operatives, which is Jyn, Cassian, K2SO, and then you've got Chirrut and Baze, they get into the stolen Imperial transport along with the pilot who has all the codes to get them through. They get onto Scarif, and that's the end of the movie, where them trying to get the plans and then transmit them out. That's where kind of the old Star Wars flavor comes through, where they're very much a la Ben Kenobi and the Death Star trying to disable the tractor beam. Is a very similar setup where they're trying to find the plans of the Death Star in it's a library.
Right, but at the same time that the Rebel fleet is now trying to get into, it's all going on simultaneously.
Yeah.
And the one thing that I found really awesome, because again, this ties so closely and directly into episode 4. You got a lot of the same characters, Mon Mothma and Bail Organa, who we saw in later movies, but they're obviously, argue the point why. How come she wasn't on Yavin in episode 4? We didn't see her until Jedi. But regardless, one of the things that Edwards geniusly did was to utilize a lot of the original trilogy costumes as much as possible to even though there's like a 30-year, 40-year gap between, episode 4 and when they started making this. And they adhered to the limitations of the time and technology of what they could build back then. So like nothing was overlooked. They adhered to the cockpit still looking like what it did in 1977 with the technology available.
Yeah. So it wasn't a case of like Prometheus versus 1979's Alien, when it was just such a disconnect of technology.
Yeah. No, he went out of his way. Same thing with Vader. If you look at Darth Vader's design in episode 4 and then what he looks like in Empire, there are subtle changes. Like the biggest one is the fact that his eye lenses went from red to black. And it's very obvious, especially on Blu-ray when you see that. But I guess the chest panel, there's some different designs. And so they were meticulously remade that costume to look exactly the way it did, for episode 4. But he found in Lucasfilm's footage archives, unused footage of the Rebel pilots, the Death Star trench run, that were not used. And he was able to bring those characters and those actors from 40 years ago and intercut them into this movie to make it seamless. Now, some of them had to go back and redub some dialogue or whatever, but it's awesome that level of heart and commitment to making a movie that adheres to the, like you said, the timeline, and it's not a huge jump in technology. Yeah, it's great.
Just those reasons alone are kind of what brings this kicking and screaming into the Star Wars universe without the crawl, without the dissolves.
Right.
That's just ephemeral stuff. It's just like the heart of it is a Star Wars movie.
Yeah, and one of the ships that goes down was Red 5. So it's like, oh, I guess Luke's got a spot now.
And just the gritty reality of them dying for the cause. They complete the mission and they sacrifice themselves for it.
Yes.
And all their deaths are worthy.
They're heart-wrenching because
they're all heart-wrenching.
You become very attached to these characters.
And they all have hero deaths too. Each and every one of them has his own hero death.
Yeah, like I said, even though all these characters were doomed, it doesn't diminish. If anything, it adds to what they sacrificed.
And not one of these actors is wasted, and not one of them is. They're all solid characters. They're all solid actors.
Yeah.
Felicity Jones as Jen Erso is a huge addition to the Star Wars universe, and right up there with Rey as a strong female character. I
Absolutely. And obviously we know that Cassian Andor is getting his own TV show on Disney Plus.
Yes, we do.
So we will kind of see him in his heyday.
See, all those adventures that he alludes to, all the things I've seen that I've had to do. I'm not going to throw it away. But yeah, as you said, let's talk about the Vader entry into this at the end. Darth Vader kicks ass at the end of this movie, and in a way you've never seen him before.
Which is great and sad at the same time, because it is a big degrade when you get into the fight with Obi-Wan in the end of episode 4. And somebody actually went to the extent of redoing that fight scene, now knowing what Vader and you can do and not do with a lightsaber. Right. And it's much more kinetic. It's much more, out of control action. It's not 1977, two old guys slapping a stick at each other. But yeah, that Vader reveal is awesome. Even like the Emperor's castle on Mustafar. Now that existed as like early Ralph McQuarrie paintings. I think it was supposed to be shown or utilized in Return of the Jedi, and it was never. So again, they're going through these archives. They're pulling out stuff that was there. It just never made it to the screen, and they're now utilizing it. And it is a very worthy Star Wars movie.
Yeah, and just that whole kinetic last scene where the rebels now have the plans that have been beamed up from Scarif, and they're going into hyperspace to get out of there. And that Star Destroyer comes in from hyperspace right at the same moment and and collides with some of those smaller rebel vehicles and completely wipes them out.
Yeah, that's something you've never seen before.
No.
Stuff like that. Like you said, the Vader, even like showing the Death Star upside down is brilliant.
Yes.
Because really, I mean, I hate to say it, there is no up and down in space. And it's been depicted like that in a couple illustrations, posters, promotional things, but it's never been shown on screen like that.
Looks like a moon on the horizon, and that's what they think it is.
Yeah.
In A New Hope.
It's beautiful.
Look at that small moon there.
Yeah, I mean, technologically, the limitations of 77. And so that ending, let's talk a bit about the reshoots, because that was, I think, one of the big detriments to this movie is that they did a fair amount of reshooting of the end sequence. And I don't know exactly what the storyline was, if they were going to have characters stay alive, but you can see a lot of that. They utilized a lot of that unused footage, that original story, in the promos and the commercials, and especially in the Rogue commercials for the car, when they were tying that in with the Chevy Rogue. Mm-hmm. You got Jyn and Andor running on the beach with the data disc in her hands. That doesn't happen.
Right.
That doesn't happen in the movie because she never makes it off the platform. Well, they do, I guess, but not
they do at the end before, right as they're looking at the
right, but not with the
disc, not with the disc.
Yeah.
They never. Yeah, she didn't have a physical disc. She only had the data files that she sent out there, didn't right?
Right.
She loaded it.
She was carrying the thing. Right. She was carrying the thing that looked like a little portable CD player.
Right. Yeah.
So, but I want to talk about this Peter Cushing, Grand Moff Tarkin.
Yes.
Because you in the previous episode had mentioned Gemini Man, and this it's a whole new ball game. You now have an actor that died in '94. Come back as a major character. He doesn't just show up as a cameo like he did in episode 3 you get an actor who, you know, has a prosthetic cheekbones put in and he turns his head and you're like, oh, it's Grand Moff Tarkin. Like, this guy is acting and it's pretty damn impressive.
They used a stand-in actor there.
Yep,
That's
Guy
physically
Henry.
on set.
Yep.
I don't know how much he resembles Peter Cushing or not.
Probably matched height-wise, maybe body proportions. I don't know if he provided the voice or if that was dubbed. He had to have done it. I would think that, yeah, that's...
Unless he was giving the lines and they dubbed him later, but
that's pretty tough.
It turns. In turns, sometimes it looks creepily like the Polar Express digital characers, and sometimes in just the right light, it looks realistic.
It is still not there, and I think the Carrie Fisher, the Princess Leia, is a little more rough around the edges.
Yes,
because she does look plastic. She looks much more Polar Express. But you got a full-on performance from this guy, and it's a guy on stage, physically on stage, with either cameras mounted to his head or the dots. And we saw it with, you know, let's take Sam Jackson from Captain Marvel. We're making like a whole industry out of this. Scorsese now has this show on Netflix with Robert De Niro, and it's like the whole life of this character. And you got De Niro running around as a 20-year-old. You don't have to hire a body double down. You don't have to hire somebody that kind of looks like him. Now, you know, with the Peter Cushing, they went back and did extensive research, other movies that he was in, to capture his mannerisms, to capture his you know, the vocal treatments. And they created, and well, they lucked out because, remember the movie Top Gun?
I remember the movie Top Secret.
Well, for anybody who's out there, it is a pretty damn good movie. But he plays a throwaway character who only shows up for but they had a face cast from that movie because he has the big fake eye when he pulls away the looking glass.
Okay.
So they did a body cast of his face. So they had that. So they have his actual. It's like a death mask almost.
Wow.
That they were able.
That's
to
creepy.
create.
That is creepy.
But that's what they had at their disposal to create this stuff. And you talk about this Gemini man. You've got 50-year-old Will Smith running around chasing after a 25-year-old Will Smith, and they are interacting with each other. And it's got to be the same thing. You have to have an actor, a body actor, who's working with it, because they're hands-on, fisticuffs, they're side by side. You can't do that split screen.
Yeah.
But they can now do it in real time. They can watch this actor with these dots on his face and on the playback monitor see Will Smith's 20-year-old version acting side by side.
Yeah. Now, it'd be interesting to see if you weren't aware, say if they did this with an actor that wasn't as high profile as this character, Moff Tarkin.
Right.
Now, if they had snuck this in, like a CG character that they didn't announce it wasn't a known actor, wasn't a known character, would you be drawn to it and pick that out right away? You know,
I don't know, because it is getting harder. I mean, we even talked about It Chapter 2, that they went back and de-aged some of these kids. Only because of like 2 years or whatever had gone by between the first.
Yeah.
So the subtle little things, but
now I appreciate the fact that they even attempted to do it. Now they need this character if they're going to make this movie. Now, do you recast it, or do you attempt to make it as close to the original as you can? So,
well, I think they decided by recasting it. I think that takes you out.
It does. It would take you out more than dealing with this computer-generated character. You tend to find yourself looking for the flaws. So that's the downfall, is your own preconceptions of looking.
But
knowing
it is
that
only
it's
you're right. It's only a matter of time before it will be discernible. You won't be able to discern it.
Yeah. So I enjoyed the fact that they tried, and I enjoyed the fact that, you know, technology has come far enough. You can put a reasonably good facsimile of Peter Cushing in there.
Yeah, which is scary. So, hey, there we go. We got Humphrey Bogart coming back for a new movie.
Now, like we said, the Carrie Fisher is kind of so waxen and so ghost-like and unconvincing that I would have been happier with maybe a stand-in or not showing her face.
Correct, because when they open the doors and you see the back, that
cut it there. That's it. That's all you need.
It's so
to see.
iconic. You know it's her. You know it's the character. All you had to do is hear the voice.
Yeah,
it's Hope,
and that's
all.
it.
You don't have to. Right. You could have easily done that. I think that by then they got a little too big for their britches. And they're like, look what we just pulled off with Grand Moff Tarkin.
Yeah.
So his Grand Moff Tarkin, that's his title. You read any book, novel, trading card, they never refer to him as anything but Governor Tarkin. I don't think anyone actually called him Grand Moff Tarkin.
No, they never did.
Right?
But did they ever call?
Make up his...
Did they ever call him that in A New Hope, or was that just what they put on
I
the
think
action figures?
Because she's always like Governor Tarkin.
Yeah.
Only you could be so bold. But then again, like the trading cards, they would refer to Darth Vader as the Lord of the Sith, and
they never really say. You don't really get the full-on Star Wars theme until the end, which...
Correct, right. But again, I think that's smart because those themes are so tied in with the characters. Like, this is like the start of all of that.
Like you said, it is smart because you've just seen that that kinetic energy at the end, the chase of following that disc as Darth Vader is chasing it and seeing that Darth Vader unleashed to his full potential. And so you're really in that Star Wars mode because they hold off Darth Vader until the end.
Yeah.
And so you're primed for that. Not only are you caught up in the heroics of the sacrifice that the Rogue One group has made, but you've just seen Darth Vader, you've just seen Princess Leia, and boom, then here comes the music. So it's really lifting you out of your seat at the end of the movie.
Yeah. So, and if you follow the cartoon Rebels, they do a couple, because the Rebels takes place prior to this, but they do bring in the spaceship from that show at one point in the space battle, and there's a call out to one of the characters over like a loudspeaker. They're looking for Captain Hera or whatever.
Okay.
So the stuff they're doing a job of trying to tie this stuff together. So we had talked about Kevin Feige now taking over the Star Wars universe. Or at least he's becoming a part of the Star Wars universe. So maybe you'll start to see these things kind of tie together a little bit more.
Yeah. And talk about spaceships. Love that Ram spaceship.
Oh, the Hammerhead. Yeah, the Hammerhead Corvette or whatever they want to refer to it as.
And that's how they break the shield from Scarab. They ram it into
another. And that also came from. There's a whole episode or one of the seasons that also came from Rebels, where they show you where they stole it.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. So there's a lot of these little, like I said, Guerrera came from one of these cartoons as well. So all these little things that they're pulling, and they really went overboard in Solo, pulling shit from all those novels and whatnot, to the point where it's almost a distraction because there were so many Easter eggs. Yeah. But in this, it's just like you can watch this and just enjoy it for what you're watching. But if you're immersed at all in any of these, extended universe items, it just layers it so much more.
Rogue One is, even now, it's only been 3 years since this thing has been out. At the time of this recording, it's a 3-year-old movie. But Rogue One is kind of like the stepchild, even of the newer Star Wars movies. It's often forgotten, I think.
Yeah, and it is very well done. It is a love letter to Star Wars.
It is.
And this is what I want to see. If I'm going to see more standalone movies, and like I said, everything came to a screaming halt after Solo, which is sad. Because I want to see more independent people who, like I said, call it a fan movie, but outside of George Lucas, everything's going to be a fan movie.
Yeah,
the movie's been out there for way too long. We're all fans.
Mm-hmm.
People who've gone on to careers in animation and in film and all this other stuff. You can't help but be influenced by this stuff. So you're going to want, if you're in charge of a movie like this, you want to put stuff in there you want to see. So I want to see more of this. I want to see different directors with different takes. And that's what I'm really hoping for with The Mandalorian. There was talk for years, standalone Boba Fett movie, and it was going to be much more like Clint Eastwood, Man Without a Name in the desert, kind of, something we haven't seen before in the Star Wars universe. And so I'm really hoping that The Mandalorian kind of fills that gap.
Yeah.
Something we haven't seen before.
Yeah.
Familiar, you got familiar characters, maybe have familiar worlds, but I'm watching it with an eye for something different.
Before we leave, I wanted to share some stats. As always, $265 million it cost to make this. So this was a price tag on this thing.
Damn.
It made $1.05 billion worldwide. So it made its money back in a big way. It is the 32nd highest grossing movie of all time.
Wow.
At this moment, and it is the 3rd highest grossing Star Wars movie, period.
But again, you're coming off a drought of Star Wars movies, because how many years between the prequels and before they finally released The Force Awakens? So this came out after The Force Awakens. So again, it's a Star Wars movie, and you damn right I'm going to go see it.
Yeah. And it's very well reviewed as well. So that had it had that going for it.
Yeah. So was Ad Astra, by the way.
Yeah. So this is true. Yeah, you can't always go by reviews.
No. So,
And I got it. We didn't mention Saul Guerrero. Again, we've mentioned him before. Very reminiscent of Frank from Blue Velvet with his sucking down that oxygen. I think, hands down, this is a 5-bucket movie, and it should be on our list.
It is on our list now. We just did an episode
it is on our list. So you can argue with that if you would like.
I will not argue with that. I will not argue that.
Okay, thank you.
You might have convinced me that it is worthy. So.
Definitely, of anything that's come out since Lucas sold the rights, I think it is the #1 product of Disney in terms of Star Wars movie. It is up there for me.
Do we have high hopes for Rise of Skywalker?
No. I'm going in with low expectations, so I can only look
which
up.
Probably is a good thing, because you know that JJ is going to retcon anything that was established in Last Jedi. We'll see. December. It's right around the corner. Here you go. All right, Jim.
All right. Yes.
May the
Thank you for listening.
Thank you.